This program has been brought to you by the Business Council of Australia. Authorised by R. Freelander, Business Council of Australia, Melbourne.
As the new Labor government prepares to deliver its first budget in October, the challenges being faced by households and businesses were in firm focus at today's Strong Australia event, jointly hosted by Sky News and the Business Council of Australia. Our Chief News anchor, Kieran Gilbert, sat down with some of its attendees, including Chief Executive Jennifer Westacott, at that event earlier today in Western Sydney.
Thanks for joining us at the Strong Australia Western Sydney Frontier Economy Forum. I'm delighted to be joined by some great guests this afternoon. Jennifer Westacott, as our viewers will know very well, Chief Executive of the Business Council of Australia. We have Sam Maresh, Country Lead, GE Australia, and Professor Andy Marks, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Western Sydney University. Thank you all so much for being here. Jennifer, this notion of frontier economy, we're right in the heart of Western Sydney here in Parramatta today. In a way, Western Sydney is already a frontier economy, isn't it?
Absolutely. If you sort of think about the big kind of concept of what is a frontier economy and a frontier society, it's at the cutting edge of things. It's at the cutting edge of creating new value. It's playing to its strengths. It's getting the most out of the skills and capabilities of its people. It's thinking 10, 20 years ahead. That's you know, in simple terms, a frontier economy. And what does that mean for people? Higher wages, good jobs, good job prospects, skilled people. So if you take Western Sydney, I think Western Sydney is already the frontier economy. The challenge is how do we get it to scale. It's already the third largest economy in Australia. Most people don't know that. It's got some of the most skilled people in Australia. It's got this huge manufacturing base already. It's got fantastic educational institutions. It's got some of the biggest companies in the world like GE already here. It's got huge interest from around the world. It's going to have a 24/7 fully digital airport. It's already at the frontier. The challenge is how we push it further, and in doing so, push Australia to the frontier at the same time.
I guess a big part of that is plugging those smaller businesses into organisations like yours, Sam Maresh at GE. And today we're looking at this fantastic collaboration you're doing with Romar Engineering. Explain to our viewers a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, Romar Engineering is a great Western Sydney business. It's an advanced manufacturing business, and what GE is doing is partnering with Romar to help them provide the kind of technology they can then make new products with that they couldn't make previously. So what our interest is in additive manufacturing, which is 3D printing of metal components. We use them in our jet engines, and that technology is being applied by Romar, a Western Sydney business, to actually create new products, new valves, to enter into the space industry and to be globally competitive.
And they're doing it at a level at the NASA.
Oh, absolutely.
Quality level.
Absolutely. This is precision high-end engineering. It's high-end advanced manufacturing. And Romar have got a set of skills. They've got some great engineers. They've got great technicians. They've got great experience. And we're partnering with them to provide the technology that allows them to have the capabilities to actually kind of service those industries, not only here in Australia, but globally.
It's super exciting. And Professor Andy Marks from Western Sydney University, we've been talking today as well about this having the largest hub of small business in the country. So the potential there is enormous, isn't it?
Look, it is, and it goes to Jennifer's point earlier on. The frontier analogy is really about the excitement that exists in Western Sydney, and it's really a case of harnessing that. And I think we've seen a wonderful initiative on the part of GE through the new education and training model that's being run out of the Aerotropolis. It's about industry-led demand for skills. It's flipping the paradigm, and we're not just producing a pipeline of graduates that are going to go nowhere.
So just for our viewers across the country, the Aerotropolis is the new Western Sydney airport, and all of the surrounding infrastructure, including this fantastic initiative that I'd love you to elaborate on, where the private sector provides inputs into the education sector and gives our economy what it needs, essentially.
Look, it addresses one of the biggest challenges that Western Sydney has, which is around connectedness and being able to engage in global supply chains. Well, here's our big opportunity. In December 2026, when the airport comes online at Bradfield in Western Sydney, we need to ensure that we're not coming from a cold start. So all of these initiatives that we're talking about now, the GE training model around additive manufacturing, are all being set up to support the airport in creating those opportunities for us internationally. Don't ever forget we have a wonderful asset in Western Sydney in the multilingualism as well. Some parts of Western Sydney have 70% of people who speak a language other than English at home. That's a ready-made connection into global markets, into Southeast Asia in particular. And here's our moment to push the button. But it's really important, as Jennifer outlined, and as Sam's spoken about, that we start early, and that's why these initiatives like the training model in additives are so important. Government's sending strong signals about the sectors that we should be involved in: semiconductors, defence, science, technology. Industry respond to those signals, but the recipe's all here in Western Sydney. And we just can't wait until the thing opens to get started. We're starting early.
And Jennifer, Westacott, this model that Professor Marks talks about, it's almost like a ground-up approach, isn't it?
Yeah. So the authority I chair, which is the Western Parkland City Authority, is running this new education model. And basically what it is that industry will come to us and they'll say, we need a blended set of micro-credentials or short courses that go to additive manufacturing, go to hypersonics, go to specialised electronics, specialised communications. We'll then go to universities and TAFEs and we'll put that micro-credential together. And then we'll be doing our own sort of analysis that says, well, what are the core capabilities that we'll need to run advanced manufacturing, to run these new industries? And then we'll be going to universities saying, well, actually, let's think about how do we do the kind of micro-credentials that would allow us to kind of skill up people. And I think that the challenge is that the skills are going to change so quickly. Technology is going to drive such rapid change, and the current model is just too slow. So this model kind of seeks to sort of get that interoperability between industry, vocational education and universities blended together around an employer, and then put that into the qualification framework driven by industry saying we need this kind of thing, which may not exist in a kind of established course.
And I know GE wants to get in there and is part of this process already.
That's right.
And it's not just about the technologies we know exist already, is it? This is a research opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a whole spectrum of opportunities here presented by our great research organisations, our great training and academic organisations. So GE is liaising and engaging with all of them, both with the new education training model, providing skills for additive manufacturing, entry-level skills. How do we actually ensure the businesses in Western Sydney, the businesses throughout Australia, can actually access this technology, as well to high-end research in terms of how do we actually develop new alloys that will be printed on 3D printing machines. So there's a whole spectrum of activity, but to your point, Andy, I think this is a race. The rest of the world is well and truly steaming ahead in trying to get capabilities. We've just gone through a pandemic where we've recognised the need to have sovereign capability. And I think what we've got here with Western Sydney, with a new airport going in, with a commitment at all levels of government, with a commitment with the research and academic institutions, the vocational education institutions, this has all of the elements for success. And not only to succeed in Australia, but to ensure our businesses can succeed and we can be a powerhouse for advanced manufacturing for the region.
Professor Marks, there are enormously qualified people in this region, but a lot of them have to commute. What's the key to change that?
I think we look for kind of generational moments in infrastructure development. The airport is the obvious one. It's in excess of $5 billion the Commonwealth Fund's invested in addressing that very issue. So bringing those job opportunities and those high-level job opportunities closer to where people live. And I think Western Sydney is a great place to lead that push nationally. The pandemic, to some extent, really flipped the accelerator on in that kind of push. But this is a way to do it and back in large-scale infrastructure. The other important thing to note is, if we look at the university role that we have to play, Jennifer's dead right, we've got to be much more agile. We've got to move faster, we've got to create opportunities to come in and out of different course streams quickly. But we've also got to untap Western Sydney's, latent strength. 59% of people that go to universities now are women. That balance is not reflected in the workplace. So measures that you see federally and at the state level through Matt Keane's budget as well in New South Wales, big pushes to get women back into the workforce and unlock that skills deficit. I think that's a great thing to do in concert with these big projects like the Aerotropolis. You've got to do both together, and bringing women back in a very big way into the economy is so important, and Western Sydney again can lead.
It's a huge missing piece, isn't it?
Yeah, and also the investment attraction, which obviously is the role that I play both in the Business Council and in running the authority. You know, the big companies in the world are very interested in Western Sydney. So when I do a video conference in Japan, or to Japan, you know, there are like 700 companies on those calls, because they can see that Western Sydney, with all the things we've talked about today, offers them access to these huge markets in Southeast Asia with this growing middle class. And so what we've got to do is kind of get jobs closer to home, high-paid jobs, high-skilled jobs, but also the full array of jobs. We actually have to do that big investment attraction piece, and the Advanced Manufacturing Research Facility that will be run out of the Aerotropolis will start to marry small businesses, big business together, identify how you scale up industries in defence, in space, in electronics, in semiconductors, the things that the country needs. Suddenly, there is this pipeline of jobs that people don't have to travel 45 kilometres.
And that will work in conjunction with the education
Absolutely.
aspect.
And then the other thing that we've got to do is get into schools. And what I want us to be doing is sort of like micro-credentials for years 11 and 12, which is that big STEM accelerator, you know, because we know that a lot of people, particularly young women, did not make good choices about maths and science and got bad career advice, whatever is the cause. Doesn't matter. It's how we correct. And so what I'd like us to be doing is sort of like, years 11 and 12, super micro-credentials for, you know, advanced mathematics, computational thinking, those sorts of things. So if we get access to skills, we get investment attraction, we get infrastructure, we get all of those things, and as you can see, that's all coming together. We will create this frontier economy.
It's certainly very exciting, there's no doubt about it. And Sam, from a multinational perspective like GE, is it fair to say that the market here is one thing, but the region is entirely different? That's where the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. We live in the most interesting part of the world, really. We live in a part of the world that will see dramatic change over the coming decades. That is hugely huge pipeline of economic growth. And I think that the opportunity we have here is to be the anchor for the region. So I see the massive investment, the reason GE's been part of this story, part of this journey with the Aerotropolis, with the Western City Parkland Authority, is because it has scale. This is a world-class development. It's a development that has all the elements to it. And I hope one day what we'll see is, you know, GE will have customers in the region. We'll have someone who purchases a 3D printer, maybe in Asia. They fly to Western Sydney. They get trained at the University of Western Sydney on how to use that equipment. They go out and meet some of the businesses and collaborate with some of the businesses here. So this airport is more than just servicing Sydney and Australia. It will be an anchor for the region.
Professor Marks, I'm intrigued with something you said to me earlier about the need not just to focus on things like STEM and those sorts of skills. We have to be a bit creative as well. Can you talk us through that?
Well, you're going to force me to reveal Western Sydney's best kept secret. It's actually a really fun place to live. And I think actually the cultural attractors that we have, the diversity in language, the diversity in religion, I think in Western Sydney is a massive asset for us. It's an exciting place to be for the arts sector as well. We have some wonderful underground arts ventures in Western Sydney, Bankstown Poetry Slam, wonderful galleries. I think it's got to be a nice place for people to work and live. And I think that also goes to the environment. We need to be doing things in Western Sydney that are frontier-like in terms of sustainability. That means world's best blue and green grid, measures to reduce heat load. All of those things can happen in an economy like Western Sydney because we're not afraid to try new things. But in the STEM push, and this is a critical thing for STEM, just to close on this one, we've got to make sure that we actually bring in the artists as well in the creative industries, because they're the wild cards. And I'm going to probably offend Sam. There's nothing more boring than a room full of engineers.
I agree with you there.
Right. But if you bring an artist into that space, an artist in residence, or you bring in some left field thinking, that's when you can really bust it open, and that's when that capacity becomes wonderful. and engineering becomes something exciting for everybody. That's also how you draw more women into that field as well, to Jennifer's point too. And we've got to start early. We've got to get into schools. And we can do it here.
Well, this is something that you talk about a lot, and that is location specific, to have hubs.
Yeah.
And Western Sydney, in a way, is already a frontier economy. So while there's wonderful scope and very exciting scope, there are actually lessons to be learned already from the success of this region for other regions around our nation.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of things. The first is that you've got to have purpose and focus. You've got to say, you know, like there are so many things you could do, but you've got to build out adjacencies. So why have we picked advanced manufacturing? Well, because there's already a huge manufacturing sector here. 75,000 manufacturers operate in Western Sydney. The issue is that about 80% of them don't export. So how do we get that scale going so that we can start to kind of get those export opportunities? But the lesson is focus, build out adjacencies, build the skill system behind them, build the investment attraction, give a clear message to investors about what this is about. But the crucial thing is you can't have 40 of these in Australia. And, you know, you've got to have, you know, like the UK has these catapults. The Germans have these Fraunhofers. They all focus on particular things, and the job is to scale it up rather than to disperse it.
So there'd be 3 cities in Sydney.
Yeah, exactly. And once you start doing that, then that internationally people say, well, to Andy's point, one of the things we want to do at Bradfield is not just the advanced manufacturing staff, not just the industry development. We want to make the city the place that people say, that is the city that is the most carbon efficient, sustainable, connected to country city in the world. So if you want to go to a place where you see a hydrogen enabled city, you go to Bradfield. If you want to go to a place where you see the world's best building materials being used, you go to Bradfield. And that also builds out new industries, because people say, well, actually, how do we learn from that? Well, we might actually set up a manufacturing facility here for advanced materials production, for building development, or for glass manufacturing, or for waste recycling. That's the sort of focus you need to have. And that brings with it stories that get around the world. So when I was in India a couple of weeks ago, people knew about Western Sydney, and they were like, well, how can we collaborate with you? Because we can do this and you can do that in Australia. That's the exciting bit. But if you've got 100 of them, it's very hard to tell that story internationally.
Jennifer Westacott, Chief Executive of the Business Council of Australia, Sam Maresh, Country Lead, GE Australia, and Professor Andy Marks, Pro Vice Chancellor, Western Sydney University. It's been great to chat. Exciting times for this region and our nation. Thank you all.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kieran.